sing for you, my Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Student Senate meeting. I'm super happy to have you all on the call. We've got a lot of fun stuff to do tonight. So with that, I'm going to call this meeting of Student Senate to order. We'll forego the Pledge of Allegiance right now over Zoom, but I do want to begin our meeting with a land acknowledgement. Our meeting that's taking place today on Thursday, October 8th, 2020. We recognize that Kansas State University, as the first land-grant institution, stands on the ancestral lands of the Kaw people. Our state of Kansas is the home of 4 federally recognized Native nations: the Iowa, Kickapoo, Prairie Band, Potawatomi, and Sac and Fox. We must remember that the land serving as the foundation for this institution was and still is stolen land acquired by white settlers, and we pledge our commitment to creating decolonized spaces at the university while advocating for the support and future success of Indigenous faculty, staff, and students at K-State. With that, we will now move into our first roll call of the evening. Our first roll call will be led by Speaker Pro Tempore Maggie Billman. Maggie, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Student Senate. I am so happy to have you all here tonight. We'll start off with Atchison.
Present.
Bain.
Here.
Booz.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Bruce.
Here.
Bruna. Burke. Carlson.
Here.
Carr. Clements.
Here.
Colburn.
Here.
Crosslow.
Here.
De Santiago. Diaz de Leon.
Here.
Dilleville.
Here.
Doc.
Here.
Fox. Thank you. Frederick.
Here.
Garrett.
Here.
Glasscock.
Here.
Grills.
Here.
Gomez.
Here.
Hamlin. Harmon.
Here.
Hurd.
Here.
Heimerman.
Here.
Hernandez. Hutchings.
Here.
Jambunathan.
Here.
Kidd.
Here.
Levi.
Here.
Loya. Manners.
Here.
McKee. Muthu Kumar. No. Norwood.
Here.
Nunnink.
Here.
Phillips.
Phillips is here, sorry.
That's okay, thank you. Porter.
Here.
Purdy. Oh, thank you. Richenberg.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Rossi.
Here.
Shunjay. All right, Snyder Ben.
Here.
Snyder Blaine.
Here.
Volgamore.
Here.
Wallace. Ward. Wells.
Here by proxy.
Oh, sorry. I missed that. Mixed that up. Wilcox,
Here.
Willis,
Here.
and Windholtz.
Here.
Okay. Is there anyone whose name I did not call? Yes, thank you for that. Okay, with that, we have 44 senators present, 5 excused, and 9 absent. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks so much for taking care of roll call for us, Maggie. With roll call completed, we'll move into our first open period. We have no scheduled speakers for first open period tonight. Is there anyone who would like to speak for first open period? If so, please indicate in the chat. Seeing none, we will now move into approval of the minutes. The minutes were distributed earlier this week for last week's student senate meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? If I can get a so moved in the chat. Moved by Senator Glasscock and seconded by Senator Crosslow. With that, are there any objections to approving last week's minutes? Seeing none, the minutes will stand approved. We'll now move into announcements for this week. So announcements, one of the things on there, if you haven't completed it yet, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is performing a demographic survey of Student Governing Association. Super short, super quick. I know a lot of you filled it out last week, but if there's anyone who's on the call this week who hasn't yet had the chance to fill that out, please fill it out. That is regardless of your position in student government. So if you are a senator, if you're an intern, if you're in the executive or judicial branches, please, please, please fill out that demographic survey. That'll be really helpful in helping the DEI committee, like when they're like looking to like analyze data about SGA. Our second announcement for the week is that the Privilege Fee Committee still has 2 open spots for student senators who wish to serve on that committee. If you are interested in either changing from your current committee assignment, taking on an additional one, or if you're not currently on a committee yet, you are very much encouraged to apply. Our Privilege Fee Committee is the only committee that has like a set number of student senators that have to be on it. And that's because of like their requirements and work with the Kansas Board of Regents. So we'd really like to get those 2 spots filled. The link for that is on the agenda, so all of you should have access to it. But we're gonna close that at midnight tonight. So please fill out that survey like ASAP. Like we would love like for new people to get on. Again, if you were a student senator in the spring who like applied for Privilege Fee as your first choice committee and you want to move off of the committee you're currently on, I would highly encourage you to like fill out this application. Like we would be more than happy to do that for you. So again, please apply for that if you're interested. My third announcement for the week is that SGA is currently looking for students to serve on the elections committee for this coming year. Members of the elections committee will actually be focused on like enforcing elections regulations in the spring semester, publicizing our elections, and performing any additional tasks that the elections commissioner will need. Members of this committee, though, are not allowed to run for any office or endorse any candidates in any way. So this is an excellent position for like anyone, if you are a senior or this is going to be your last year in SGA, just for like personal reasons, we would really love for you to apply to be on this committee. Additionally, I know that we have lots of interns on the call tonight, but interns, if you are looking at like judicial branch as the branch that you're interested in the future, because that one doesn't have people apply for it, I'd encourage you to be on the elections committee if you're interested in judicial as like your long-term SGA involvement. A lot of what judicial does helps with our election cycle. So definitely those are the 2 groups that like I'd like to ask, but application will close just a few weeks from now on Thursday, October 22nd at 11:59 p.m. So again, like please apply for that. I think this year in particular, we need a good, strong elections committee that can deal with like the stuff around COVID and all the new things involved with that. So if you are like passionate about helping students get involved in SGA and making sure things are fair and equitable, I really encourage you to apply for that position. Fourth announcement for the week is Senator Levi is currently searching for anyone with previous public speaking experience who'd like to participate in a voter information event for first-time voters. If selected, speakers will be compensated for their time and will be featured in promotional materials for the event. Previous experience in debate is preferred, but is not required. If you would like more information, please email Senator Levi, whose email is included on the agenda. Again, SGA is partnering with the Student Athletics Advisory Committee for their annual Cats for Cans event. You can make donations here at the SGA office if you'd like to, but you can also, I included a flyer. I believe Caucus Leader Carlson can speak more about this later with the agenda for the week that has like a QR code for you to be able to donate as well. Proxies for this week are Diaz de Leon for Bummett, Muthu Kumar for Panikatu, Snyder Blaine for McVeigh, Carlson for Gallardo, Weinholtz for Wells, and Clements for Vance. I believe that's all the proxies that I have for this week. I got a lot more of them today, last minute, so please make a note if I didn't say your proxy. Number 7 for the week is that the SGA members of the week are the Privilege Fee Committee members for their extreme due diligence working on all the new budget legislation. The Privilege Fee Committee has been meeting multiple times a week, and all members have been super active and engaged in some really long discussions and debate about these things. Thank you all for your service to SGA and your dedication to this process. If we can all do the little clapping reaction right now and celebrate the Privilege Fee Committee, that would be awesome. You all are so great, and it's been so great working with all of you through this. Finally, our quote of the week this week is, "Making tough decisions that may make someone unhappy is something to get good at doing." And that's from Phoebe Robinson. With that, the next item on our agenda is commendations. We do have one commendation this week, Resolution 27. Can I get a motion for us to consider Resolution 27? Moved by Caucus Leader Diaz de Leon, seconded by Senator Kraslow. With that, will the author of Resolution 27 please come forward?
Hello.
Feel free to just
All right.
for us. Yeah.
All right, so this is Resolution 2027, Commendation to the Wildcat Dialogues Planning Committee, authored by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Whereas Wildcat Dialogues is one of K-State's signature intercultural learning events for all new students. Whereas the Fall 2020 event was held virtually rather than in person due to health and safety guidelines around COVID-19. Whereas Wildcat Dialogues took place on Monday, September 21st, 2020, with over 800 new students in attendance and 94 volunteer facilitators. And whereas the event is a coordinated effort between the Diversity and Multicultural Student Affairs and Stanley School of Leadership Studies in partnership with the committee representing students, faculty, and staff, this collaboration aims to represent our commitment by our campus community to foster a culture of belonging. And whereas the Wildcat Dialogues 2020 was led by the co-chairs Julia Gross, Vendant Kulkarni, Johari Snell, Deborah Bolton, and Tamara Bauer. Be it resolved that Section 1, the Kansas State University Student Governing Association congratulates Wildcat Dialogue 2020's co-chairs, planning committee, and partnering departments on their continuous efforts to make Kansas State University a more inclusive space. KSU SGA recognizes the incredible contributions that Wildcat Dialogues has on new students as they begin to create communities of belonging on campus. In Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature by the student body presidents, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to the 2020 co-chairs, Julia Gross, Vendant Kulkarni, Johari Snell, Dr. Deborah Bolton, Director of Intercultural Learning and Academic Success, Tremaine Lindsay Jr., the Director of Diversity and Multicultural Student Life, Tamara Bauer, the Stanley School of Leadership from the Stanley School of Leadership Studies, Adrian Rodriguez, Associate Vice President for the Student of Life and Diversity and Multicultural Student Affairs, Thomas Lane, the Vice President of Student Life and Dean of Students, and University President Richard B. Myers.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Oh, Caucus Leader Kidd, sorry, it looks like you have a correction.
Yes, I'm so sorry. So on line 42, where it has Thomas Lane, Vice President, it should be Vice President for Student Life, not Vice President of Student Life.
Yes, I can make that correction.
Okay. Duly noted.
Is there any other questions or corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 27 unanimously? Moved by Chair Rodriguez and seconded by Caucus Leader Diaz de Leon. So with that, are there any objections to approving Resolution 27 unanimously? Seeing none, Resolution 27 will be approved. Can we get like clap reactions for that one? Also, a special shout out, Vedant Kulkarni is the International Affairs Director for SGA, and he did a whole lot of planning in this. Such a cool guy if you haven't met him. So special claps for him. Like we can claim him as our own. So with that, we'll now move on to our appointments for tonight. We have Resolution 28 is our first appointment. Can I get a motion to consider Resolution 28? Moved by Caucus Leader Carlson and seconded by Senator Hurd. Will the author of Resolution 28 please come forward?
Yeah, hello everyone. This is Resolution 2021-28, approval of new student senators by Senate Operations Committee. Whereas Anna Schmidt and Justin Watkins resigned from the positions of student senator for the College of Arts and Sciences, whereas Colin Heimerman and Javier Loya have the next highest vote totals of eligible and willing candidates in the 2020 Kansas State University Student Governing Association general election for College of Arts and Sciences student senator. Whereas Grace Reedman resigned from the position of student senator for the College of Health and Human Sciences, whereas the candidates from the 2020 KSU SGA general election for HHS student senator have been exhausted. Whereas the HHS College Council did not reply with a person to appoint within 2 weeks after they were contacted, and whereas the HHS College Caucus recommended Morgan Purdy for the position. We resolved that the following individuals be approved as student senators for the College of Arts and Sciences: Colin Heimerman and Javier Loya. And Section 2, the following individual be approved as a student senator for the College of Health and Human Sciences: Morgan Purdy.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve Resolution 28 unanimously? Moved by Senator Hernandez. Can I get a second to that? Seconded by Senator Porter. So with that, Resolution 28, are there any objections to approving it? Seeing none, Resolution 28 will stand approved. Javier actually couldn't be with us tonight. He has a calculus exam, but Colin and Morgan are on with us. So if the two of you would like to unmute your screen and then raise your right hand right now, I will get you sworn in. Okay, so if you both are ready, at the end, all you have to do is say, "I do." So I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of student senator and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association.
I do.
Awesome. Congratulations to you both. We are so excited to have you both join us in Student Senate for the year. Can we get claps for the two of them? Awesome, Colin and Morgan. With that, we'll now move on with our agenda, which is Resolution 29. Can I get a motion to consider Resolution 29? Moved by Caucus Leader Clements and seconded by Senator Hurd. With that, will the author of Resolution 29 please come forward?
Right. Resolution 2021-29, approval of SGA Phase 2 interns by Nathan Bothwell, Hannah Heatherman, and Megan Spiegel. Whereas the Kansas State University Student Governing Association intern program was sufficiently advertised, whereas 30 individuals attended at least 3 sessions of the KSU SGA Phase 1 intern program, whereas all 30 individuals who fulfilled this requirement applied to Phase 2 of the KSU SGA intern program, and whereas all 30 of these students were selected to continue on to Phase 2. Be it resolved that Section 1, the following individuals be approved as KSU SGA Phase 2 interns for the 2021 term. Adam Baruth, Akash Kodela, Ashley Elliott, Braden Taka, Brandon Kermer, Brian Uochi, Caleb Stout, Colleen Fulton, Colton Vanyar, Drew Bellavy, Duru Dogan, Elizabeth Chapman, Eric Moore, Hattie Polson, Hugo Nascimento, Jacob Long, Kate Thomas, Lane Johnson Martinez, Logan Cohn, Maggie Osterhaus, Meredith Comas, Nick Saya, Peyton Lynn, RJ Solomon, Brianna Dunlap, Reed Cruson, Ryan Ranza, Sydney Stuckey, Tommy Compton, and William Bannister.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, I will now seek a motion to approve this resolution unanimously. It's been moved by Chair Booz. Can I get a second? Seconded by Senator Hurd. Are there any objections to approving Resolution 29? Seeing none, Resolution 29 will be approved. We will now get to swear the interns in. I think Hannah or Megan will be performing the oath of office. So all the interns in Wildcat Chamber, do the same thing as the senators did. Raise your right hand. Interns who are on the Zoom call, you also can unmute yourself right now and raise your right hand and turn your camera on. But I'm gonna turn it over to the intern coordinators to get you guys sworn in.
Okay. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully uphold the office of Phase 2 intern and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association.
I do.
I do.
Awesome. Congratulations to all of our interns. Yay. We actually, guys, have a really fun special video that was made by the intern coordinators. If you will give me just a second to get it pulled up. Everyone else on the call, we can actually get to know them all a little bit better. So give me just a second to get it pulled up.
Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Adam Baruth. I am a finance major, and I'm also getting a minor in leadership studies. My hometown is DeSoto, Kansas, and my favorite smell is my Versace Eros cologne. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Akash Kodela. My major is in College of Engineering. My hometown is in England. I was born in England. And my favorite smell would be chocolate. Thank you.
My name is Ashley Elliott, and I am studying elementary education and history. I'm from Olathe, and my favorite scent is blackcurrant.
Hi, my name is Braden Taha. I'm from Lyman, Colorado. I'm a civil engineering major, and my favorite smell is freshly cut grass.
Hi, my name is Brandon Kermer. I'm a freshman from Overland Park, Kansas, majoring in architecture, and my favorite scent is probably apple cider in the fall.
Hey everyone, my name is Caleb Stout. I'm majoring in agricultural economics. I'm from the small town of Cottonwood Falls, Kansas, and I'd have to say my favorite smell is leather.
Hi, I'm Colleen Fulton. I'm from Loop City, Nebraska, and I'm majoring in psychology, and my favorite smell is vanilla sugar.
Hi, my name is Drew Bellamy. I'm an English education major, and I'm from Olathe, Kansas, and my favorite smell is artificial banana. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Dewar Dogan and I'm from Manhattan, Kansas. I'm double majoring in statistics and political science, and my favorite smell is coffee.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Chapman. I'm majoring in political science and I'm from Manhattan, Kansas. My favorite smell would have to be rose.
Hey Wildcats, my name's Hattie Polson and I am originally from Frankfort, Kansas. I am currently studying milling science and management, and my favorite smell is coffee, specifically Radina's Bakehouse.
Hey, my name is Hugo Nascimento. I'm majoring in finance, and my favorite smell would probably be the smell of coconuts.
Hi, my name is Jacob Long, and I'm from Olathe, Kansas. I'm majoring in construction science and management and minoring in business and leadership. My favorite smell is winter cranberries from Bed Bath & Beyond.
Hello, my name is Kate Thomas. I'm a political science major from Kansas City, Missouri, and my favorite scent is fresh ground coffee.
My name is Lane Johnson Martinez. I'm a freshman studying political science. I am from Marysville, Kansas, and my favorite smell is burning firewood.
Hello, my name is Logan Cohn. I'm from Lone Tree, Colorado, and my majors are Management Information Systems, Organizational Management, and I have a minor in Leadership Studies. And I would say my favorite smell is my Versace cologne. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maggie Ostraus. I am a sophomore from Basehor, Kansas, and my major is Nutritional Science with minors in Leadership and Human Development and Family Studies. And my favorite smell is the rain.
Hi everyone, my name is Nick. I'm a freshman in civil engineering. My hometown is Olathe, Kansas, and my favorite smell is the weird way the air gets when it's about to be wintertime. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Hi, my name is Peyton Lynn and I'm from Tonganoxie, Kansas. My major is secondary education with an emphasis on speech and theater, and my favorite smell is freshly baked banana bread.
My name is Rihanna Dunlap from Kiowa, Kansas, majoring in agricultural education, and my favorite scent is freshly cut wheat.
Hey there, my name is Reed Cruson. I am from Overland Park, Kansas. I am majoring in political science with a minor in Spanish, and my favorite smell is the smell of fresh baked cookies.
Hello, my name is RJ Solomon. I'm majoring in personal financial planning. I'm from Olathe, Kansas, and my favorite smell has to be a well-done s'more.
Hi everybody, my name is Sydney Stuckey. I'm a sophomore here at K-State. I'm majoring in accounting and I'm minoring in leadership. I'm from Shawnee, Kansas, and my favorite smell is the smell of a bonfire.
Hi, my name's Tommy Compton and I'm from Overland Park, Kansas. I'm majoring in biomedical engineering and my favorite smell is Kansas City barbecue brisket.
Hello, I'm Will Bannister. I'm from Manhattan, Kansas, and I'm planning to major in economics, finance, entrepreneurship, and pursue a interdisciplinary pathway at K-State, along with minoring in leadership studies. I would have to say that my favorite smell is probably the smell of freshly cooked bacon.
So big shout out to all the interns. If you can't tell, we are all so excited to have you join. Obviously, I'm really biased because I used to be intern coordinator a couple of years ago, but we're so excited to have you all. A reminder to everyone that like getting sworn in, like student senators and everyone else on the call, like if you know people who you think like would enjoy SGA, like our intern program, you know, like welcomes like all students, like all like the only requirement to like get sworn in is attend 3 meetings. So like people just have to like want to be here and we will get them sworn in. So like we're so excited like for all the new interns, and we hope to get more as the year comes on. Also a reminder, interns can now like make motions and stuff like that. So if you're like on the chat or in the Zoom, like you have the ability to do that and you have speaking rights and everything. So all really fun stuff that you get just by like showing up to our meetings. So welcome all of you. We're so excited to have you. But we're going to continue on with the rest of our meeting agenda from here. But awesome to have all of you finally get sworn in. With that, we're going to continue on with our meeting agenda. Our next item of business is committee reports for tonight. Is there any committee chair who has a report that they would like to give? Chair Brown, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. This will be really quick, but there are still 2 open vacancies on the Privilege Fee Committee. There is an application that I'll send the link to in a chat that you can apply for. It's pretty quick. This does have to be a spot, like 2 spots that go to senators. So if you're a senator and you're interested in serving on 2 committees or possibly switching over to the Privilege Fee Committee, please check that out. Things will be going back to a lot more like normal times soon. I know there's been a lot of crazy things with Privilege Fee happening, so don't be scared. It's a really fun time. Please fill out the application.
Are there any questions for Chair Brown? Seeing none, are there any other committee chairs who would like to give a report? That's just Madison sending something. Seeing none, I'll now move on to directors' reports. Are there any directors who have a report to give? It looks like the intern coordinators do simultaneously, so I'll turn it over to them.
Hi, for the sake of everybody's time with this important meeting, I was just going to let everybody know that the interest indicators for if you would like to get a mentee from this intern class will be going out tonight via email, as well as the intern program nomination form once again. So as you meet more students on campus, if you see anyone you think would be a good fit to join the intern program, then the first meeting of class 2 will be a week from today. I'll stand for questions.
Are there any questions for intern coordinator Heatherman? I'm kind of breaking a question rule here, but I'm going to ask intern coordinator Heatherman, what does being an SGA mentor entail?
Wow, I don't think you know the answer to that one. Being an SGA mentor, especially this year, just means like being a resource to your student senate or to an intern, whether that's them finding their place in all aspects of campus life, teaching them about what SGA does, being their like DM buddy during Zoom meetings, I think is like a big thing, keeping it interesting, and just being their resource to ask questions and to have their best interest and their holistic experience at K-State in mind throughout that process.
Thanks, Hannah. Are there any other questions for the intern coordinators? Seeing none, are there any other directors who would like to give a report? I'm going to turn it over to Speaker Pro Tempore Billman right now.
Hi, everyone. Really quickly, we have some very exciting news about the resolution we passed through last week, recommending 2, not consecutive, but 2 separate well-being days in the spring that fall on either a Monday or a Friday. After Senate last week, Speaker Bothwell and President Whitmer stuck around and got this signed, and so we were able to get that sent off to admin before their meeting at 8 a.m. Last Friday morning. And we got really positive feedback on that. I actually got an email from Provost Tabor saying that he supports our reasoning and appreciates the resolution. So hopefully some good news coming out of the University Calendar Committee very soon regarding 3-day weekends in the spring. So I stand for questions if anyone has any.
Are there any questions for Speaker Pro Tem Billman? Seeing none, are there any other directors who would like to give a report? Seeing none, I have a director's report to give. I'm going to kind of do a holistic overview of what the rest of this meeting is going to look like tonight, give you some context on the privilege fee stuff, and then hopefully just take any questions right now. So like we can get questions answered out of the way before we proceed into debate or anything like that later. So just to clarify, so everyone on the call right now knows what like the rest of our meeting is going to be taken up by. You'll notice that we only have one bill, an introduction of legislation, and that is Bill 2021-14, the privilege fee budget adjustments. So this bill is the one that we have been telling you about for some weeks now, where we're adjusting all of the privilege fee contracts. Last week, President Whitmer and myself gave a joint presentation on what this all entailed and like what was in the bill, but I do just want to like recover it a bit right now. So again, you can be totally informed and ask any questions that you would like. So last week at 5:30 before Student Senate, the Privilege Fee Committee received this bill for the first time and started working on it. In the week since they first looked at it, they've made 2 amendments to it. So I'm going to scroll down really quickly. There's a significant number of whereas clauses in here that explain all of the like backstory, reasoning, why we're cutting budgets to the degree that we are, as well as our reasoning for every decision. But when you scroll down here to the bottom, you can find a table of all the exact decisions that are being made by voting on this bill. So you can see like how much the entities received originally this year, what their new allocation will be after this passes, the exact amount that they'll be returning to the overall privilege fee, and what % change this will be. Our total right now is equal to around $2.2 million that we'll be cutting out of the privilege fee. And like, it is not an exaggeration to say that that is the largest like budget decrease in the history of the privilege fee. The deficit we're facing right now is the largest one as well due to COVID. So this is like pretty intense, pretty important, and probably some of like the biggest monetary changes like in the history of K-State student government ever. So that's why I'm really trying to do due diligence here and making sure everyone's informed on it. But the committee specifically made 2 changes before they voted to approve the budget in the original budget was one that Madison, myself, and Tell came up with as a group, and then we presented it to the committee. And the committee made 2 like pretty substantive changes. The first one is that they increased the amount from counseling services. Counseling services initially only had a 1% decrease, but the committee voted to change that to a 25% decrease. Kind of in their research and all the questions the committee was asking, it was discovered that counseling services actually has about a $500,000 kind of like carryover item from last year. And so that essentially means that they still have about $500,000 that they've like built up over the past few years that they kind of have just in case. The committee felt that counseling services could still take a pretty substantial callback of around $200,000, which would help our overall financial situation, but hopefully wouldn't decrease any services at counseling due to that large carryover that they had. So in our initial budget, we only had them at 1%, but that was changed to 25% decrease after the committee looked at it. The other change that was made was to the Graduate Student Council line item of the student activity fee. The Graduate Student Council essentially gives out awards for graduate students that are presenting their research at conferences. And we had both Marcus Kidd, who's a graduate senator and is on privilege fee, and then Senator Billy Croslow attended the meeting and kind of informed privilege fee on how that money's spent. They're actually seeing an uptick in applications right now. More students are actually traveling since it's just essentially all virtual. So they felt that our initial proposal of 60% of a budget decrease to them was a little too high. Because of that, they decreased our budget decrease from Graduate Student Council got lowered to 40%. So we're actually taking less money from Graduate Student Council than we initially were. So those are the only two changes that the committee made to the bill. So now I kind of want to move in onto like some later events and what the rest of tonight's going to look like. Last week, we had some clarifying questions specifically about student health. So there's kind of like three different things that ultimately make up Lafine's callback of $712,000. We initially decreased them by only 1%. After realizing we needed to decrease more, Lafine, basically over an email with us, agreed that they could take a slightly larger budget cut of $156,000. And then they're also receiving $500,000 in federal COVID relief funds. So those funds we're actually recalling because Lafine's getting them from somewhere else to supplement their budget. However, just this afternoon, the Student Health Center emailed us back, and it turns out that there was a bit of miscommunication on our parts as we were doing that extra arrangement with them. It turns out that they could actually only take about $100,000, not $156,000 extra. So later tonight, you'll actually see an amendment being brought forth that will reduce the amount of the student health callback from $712,000 to about $656,000. That's a $50,000 difference, so it's pretty substantial, and so we can get into that later. But essentially, like Lafine would have to like decrease some of their more of their services if they take an additional like $56,000 cut. And after review, like they don't think that they'll be able to manage that. I think it's the opinion of myself, Madison, and Tell that like Lafine is pretty important right now in the middle of a pandemic, and that's not a service that we like want to stretch for students. So I think that like that's an amendment that this body will have to look at later this evening as we're going through this process. So what is the rest of our meeting tonight going to look like? Well, this is technically only an introduction of legislation. Legislation is typically a 2-week process. So this is in its first week before the body. However, it is, again, like kind of like my opinion, as well as like Madison's and Tell's, that we'd really like this to pass through as soon as possible. The entities have a deadline right now of returning these funds to us by December 1st. And the later we wait to pass this budget, the more of a chance that some of these entities are going to spend their money and like not even be able to make some of these callbacks as they exist right now. So we'd really like to pass this ASAP to give them enough time and enough notice possible to change their budget. So a motion to special order will most likely be on the floor later tonight. A motion to special order requires a 2/3 vote majority to pass. And with that, we would then immediately proceed into debate and a vote on this tonight as well. So I'm of the opinion that I'm pretty comfortable with us doing that tonight. I know we don't special order things too terribly often, but I'm comfortable doing that tonight, first of all, because of how like in-depth the Privilege Fee Committee has been. They've had 3 meetings in the past week alone on this piece of legislation. So like there's been a lot of student eyes and discussion around it. And additionally, again, it's that second piece of making sure that we get this passed through with enough time. So I believe that's everything. Again, I hope that like summarizes the whole process, but I would really like to take any questions right now that people have about this process at this time. I guess before I move into questions, I do want to reiterate one thing that I said last week and a little bit earlier now. And that is that this is a tough piece of legislation to look at, and it's a tough piece of legislation to read. If you notice that like some of the impacts that we brought up last week were that like there will be students that will lose their on-campus jobs if you vote yes on this legislation. And I'm not trying to mince words. I think you as student senators, the people who vote on this, need to honestly know like what you're voting on and what your vote means. Like there's some like really tough things that are happening here. Like we are in a tough situation. I think everyone knows that. But so I really encourage you to look at all of the impacts and think really deeply about them. I hope that this doesn't feel like something that you feel compelled to do. I want you to feel empowered in this process. I think that this piece of legislation really shows the power that our university gives the students, like here in student government. Like, you know, we could have done this process entirely differently. If we cut Lafine's budget by 30%, we could cut everyone else by 0. We wouldn't need to cut anyone else. But I think we all know that Lafine is really important right now, and we probably shouldn't cut their budget very much. But those are the kinds of decisions that we've had to think about already, and I encourage you to think about. Not just was this cut high or low enough, but were these cuts in the right places and done in the right way? I think as we're like working through everything tonight, I want to make sure that again, that everyone feels empowered, and again, that you realize that like, this is like very important. This is like historical and a first for our student government to deal with, but also again, like it should be you like feeling strongly about like advocating for students and like doing the right thing. Like I welcome any questions. I welcome any disagreement on like, these were hard decisions. They weren't fun ones to make in our initial budget meeting. And I don't imagine that you're having fun right now contemplating how you're going to vote. So like with that, I want to open the floor for questions now. I want like any and all questions that you might have of me. Like I would like to take those and answer those. If it's just about my thought process on certain things, if it's again, how this process went down, if it's more clarification, if it's why a certain entity got a certain dollar amount decrease, I'd like to answer all of those questions right now so we can help like clarify any like questions or doubt that you might have in your mind. So I'm going to turn it over to questions at this time. And I will happily take any questions that the body or anyone really like here might have of me. Again, like interns, like you can ask questions, like directors, like if there's anyone from cabinet, you can ask questions. Like, so any questions I'll take right now. Chair Booz.
Yeah, I mean, I was fairly, I attended the meetings of privilege fee and stuff like that, but I never thought about asking like about the total amount of jobs that would be cut. So like, do you have a ballpark number of how many student workers and how many like other salaries would be cut?
Yeah, so I don't have an exact figure on that. A lot of the quotes that are in here came directly out of the entity's impact statements when we were writing the whereas clauses. But essentially, like some of them do specify the number. For example, I know that Student Design Services clearly stated that they would cut 3 student positions. 2 of them are currently vacant, but 1 is currently employed. Others were a little bit more vague. For example, since Lafine's budget cut would be around like $100,000, like they just said that they would like reduce like hours and employment, but they didn't really specify what positions or where. So I don't really have an exact figure to give you, but if you look through this legislation, you can see pretty clearly like who mentioned that. I'm trying to think right now, the ones that come to my mind. Student Health clearly said that. I know Student Design Services did. I believe the Rec Center, with the cut that we gave them, would have to cut student jobs at the Rec Center. I think CSI clarified that they would at least reduce hours, if not terminate like employment for their student employees. So like throughout, there's a lot. I don't have a specific for you, but I would say that we're dealing with at least students that will feel the impact of this like pretty directly in their employment. I would say it'd be in like 30, 40, if not like more than that. Like it's in the tens, I would say, like dozens of students. Is probably the best I can give you.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
It looks like Senator Levi, you had a question.
I'm still muted. There we go. I just wanted to ask, with this bill, do we run the risk of these budget cuts as they are now being insufficient to address the hardships laid out in the whereas clauses?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I really appreciate you asking that. So right now, our anticipated deficit is like greater than $3.5 million, potentially around the like area of like 4 million or a little bit above that. Like spring enrollment will be like the ultimate deciding factor in that, which we obviously don't have yet. No one started enrolling for the spring. So it's kind of just based off projections that we have right now. With this budget cut of $2.2 million, our idea is to like pull the remaining like funds out of our bond surplus account. Our bond surplus account is a large like reserve account that we have that we've used to offset like deficits we've had in the past. That account currently has $4.9 million in it. So if we're around like a $4 million deficit, we'd be pulling around $2 million out of that bond surplus account. So basically this process is, we're kind of trying to do like half of this process through cuts, half of this process through pulling out of our reserves to cover the remaining deficit. Really, like I'm feeling pretty confident about where we stand now, that hopefully we should not need to go back and do callbacks again in the spring semester. But we never know how COVID's going to go. There's a whole thing. So that's why we're trying to be like a little bit conservative and not pull everything out of bond surplus, because we don't want to like have it be next year and the situation still be continuing or worse and then not have enough funds in our reserve to cover it. Does that make sense and hopefully answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect.
Nate, can I add something a little bit onto that?
Yes, go for it, Madison.
Something that we possibly will look at doing in the coming semester or next semester is also taking some smaller amounts out of reserve accounts that we have. So for example, we have our bond surplus account, which is the account that has around $4.9 million and is typically used for our deficits along with our debt reduction account. But we do have some random accounts here and there. For example, there's a reading contingency account, which is essentially a program that we used to have that was like providing subscriptions and like the opportunity for students to like access readership for like subscriptions, journals, etc. There's around $58,000 in that account, and that program has been discontinued. And so hopefully, definitely like the more we can decrease throughout this whole fiscal year, the better. So we hopefully will be looking at taking maybe that like $58,000 and having that go towards covering the deficit, as well as a few other small amounts here and there. So
Yeah.
I do think that this is good for this is like enough for this piece of legislation, but also the more money that we can use to cover this deficit to mean that we take less out of bond surplus, the better.
Yeah, another thing I'd add to Madison's point is we have been looking at all the tiny little accounts that we have and seeing like other small areas we can pull from as well. So that's one thing we've been looking into, but we've been focused on this part first. Are there any other questions from anyone in the body at all? Anyone on the Zoom call about this piece of legislation, about the insufficient funds process? Anything at all that we can clear up right now at this time? Senator Hutchings.
Yeah, did the places that we're pulling the money from, did they get an opportunity to say how much they're like losing, or did we just make up those numbers?
Yeah, so the way that this process works is that we initiated the process by asking for impact statements from all of them. So we contacted every entity and said like, hi, can you tell us what the impacts of these budget cuts would do to you? And so we had different tiers. Here, I'll scroll up and show this. So, okay, so we separated the entities into like 3 different tiers based off like how COVID should have theoretically like changed people's operations for the year. So tier 1 entities were defined as like high priority, like we still need. There were only 3 entities in that category, and that was the Union, Lafine, and Counseling Services. And so we asked them only to tell us about a 1%, a 3%, and a 5% budget cut. And then Lafine, we only gave a 1% to, but we'll be amending that a bit later. We gave a 0% to unit operations because they'd have to lose some like pretty critical staff members. And then we gave initially only a 1% to counseling, but then we discovered that counseling had some extra money, so we bumped them up to a 25%. Then tier 2 gave us 5%, 10%, and 20% budget decreases. And then tier 3 entities gave us like 20, 40, 60. Those decreases are like, we don't have to stick to those numbers that we asked for. We're really just asking for the impacts of like those specific numbers so we can see like how different their operations would be with these specific impacts. So really from there, like we can ultimately settle on any number that we want, which is how we settled on the numbers that we did. We had a lot of follow-up conversations. Like Madison took a lot of phone calls from a lot of entity directors, but entity directors were also invited to come to the privilege fee committee to like raise any questions, bring anything up to us, as well as even tonight's meeting. I think there's only 1 entity director on right now, or Corey Williamson from the union was on earlier. I think maybe he had to step out. But so like they were invited to attend tonight as well. If they like, again, entity directors are welcome to debate things if they'd like to on the floor. So we've tried to include them as much as possible in this process. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Perfect. Any other questions at all? Speaker Pro Tem Billman. Sorry guys, I have to mute myself because her and I are in the same room.
Okay, so I hate to ask like a question that I know the answer to, but if there's like a guest who wants to debate something who doesn't have speaking rights, how could we go about that?
Yeah, so if anyone ever wants to debate something, but like they don't have speaking rights because they're not a member of our organization, they would just need to indicate that they would like to speak in the chat or something like that. And then anyone who has speaking rights, so student senators, committee chairs, like if you're a member of SGA, you have speaking rights basically. And like if you've been ever sworn in, you have speaking rights. And so a person can just choose to defer their speaking rights to that person, which means they're just allowing someone to like take one of their opportunities to speak. And as Chair Brown said, you're only able to debate twice on a motion. So like Maggie, if you were to defer your speaking rights to a speaker, you could only debate on something once then after that. Next up, Senator Hamlin.
Hi. I don't know if you touched on this already, or I can't remember, but is there a possibility that these budget cuts would continue into the 2021-2022 school year, or would they increase?
So, sorry, I'm gonna ask you to clarify your question. Are you saying like, do you think that we'll have to do this again?
Yes, would we have to do this?
Yeah, I'll let Madison answer this.
So right now, these budget cuts that we are doing are for fiscal year 21. So fiscal years don't technically line up with school years. So fiscal year 21 started this July 1. So it goes July 1, 2020 to July 1, 2021. And so therefore, we are taking out money that like we are asking back for money that we've already allocated. So hopefully this is the last time that we have to do anything for fiscal year 21. The Privilege Fee Committee is beginning to discuss allocations for fiscal year 22 and beyond though. So for example, next week, the Collegian is going to be coming in because their contract ends at the end of fiscal year 21. So they currently don't have any allocated funding for fiscal year 22. So the committee will be discussing their allocation for fiscal year 22 and beyond. Although it will look very different to this process because it'll be a typical entity review, I wouldn't be surprised if going forward in the next few years, because COVID will still probably have a presence in all of our lives and will still be affecting higher education. I would not be surprised if, as the committee continues their regular privilege fee reviews, that decreases will be happening. One, because of decreases in enrollment, not COVID specific, but also because of the loss of revenue for COVID. So kind of a complex answer. Hopefully we're done with this insufficient funds process, which is where we review the whole budget at once. But I will say that going forward, we probably still will be looking at having decreases for entities because we have been pulling out of bond surplus quite a bit the past few years.
Yeah, so just to like give the cliff notes of that, this piece of legislation only impacts this year. Future years might have to do the same thing again, depending on how COVID goes. Like shrug, we don't know what that's going to look like. So does that answer your question, Olivia?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Senator Hurd, you have the next question.
Good evening, everyone. My question is about the bond surplus account. So can you kind of explain what the purpose of that account is?
Yeah, for sure. So part of the privilege fee, actually about a quarter of it, goes towards bonds that are on the student union and the rec center. In 2010 and in 2015, when enrollment was increasing, the student body, not just student senate, but it was actually a question during the SGA elections, voted to have a bond for both those buildings to renovate them. Those bonds, though, are something that we're paying off for essentially like the next 30 years. They're pretty long for how long they're going to impact us. Because of like the length of those bonds, we actually overcharge students on the bond payments. So part of your privilege fee goes towards paying off that bond, but a little bit extra goes into this bond surplus account each year. The bond surplus account exists to make sure that we don't default on our bonds. So that's another reason why we don't want to take too much out of it this year, because if COVID goes on, we don't want to default on those bond payments at all. But the bond surplus account has some special provisions that we're able to pull out of it for essentially like special projects if we need to. And the chief financial officer has worked with us to essentially like declare like restoring our budget to like $0 to special projects. So does that answer your question, Brenda?
Yes, and I have a follow-up if that's okay.
Yep, perfect. No problem.
Okay. So with the bond surplus account and the impacts of COVID, to my understanding, you guys don't want to take as much money as you possibly need out of that account. Instead, you want to cut the budget for certain student employees who are in more need, or how does that?
Do you mind if I take that one?
Yeah, you can go for it, Madison.
So there are 3 ways that we can essentially create revenue or create money for the privilege fee. One of those is going to be by increasing the fee. One of those is going to be by decreasing budgets. And then one of those is going to be by taking money out of bond surplus. So really what we're trying to do is utilize a mix of all 3 of them. With this current decrease that we're having, we're still going to be taking around $1.73 million out of the bond surplus, which is a lot. So we're utilizing taking money from bond surplus, as well as sadly, we are having to decrease budgets. And one of the reasons for that is because if we didn't decrease budgets, we would be taking around $4 million out of bond surplus, which would mean that we had like no money in bond surplus. We would have around $1 million in bond surplus, which technically is less than our like bond covenants that we're supposed to be in there. The only time that we would be allowed to go like that much below bonds, like the bond surplus amount, is if we like cannot pay our bonds, and we would have to pull out of that money to like pay the people who have purchased K-State Union and Recreation bonds. So I think to kind of answer your question, I think you're kind of getting at like, why are we decreasing student wages? Because that sucks. And obviously no one wants to do it. Sadly, we're kind of trying to take a little bit of everything. And one of the reasons we are decreasing budgets so much this year is because let's say next year is pretty bad fiscally, like it is this year. If we don't have enough, if we took everything out of bond surplus this year, we wouldn't have any money in bond surplus next year, which means we would have to like obliterate the budget even more than we currently are. So we're trying to keep a good mix of taking money out of bond surplus as well as decreasing budgets. And sadly, one of the side effects of that is that there will probably be reduced student worker hours.
Yeah, so I think Madison ultimately hit like the crux of this. Like we're trying to manage both like the short term, like really important things that you brought up, Brenda, of like student employment and things like that, with like the long term, we don't know how COVID's going to go. So we're trying to like walk the like fine narrow line between those two things. So hopefully like we feel that like this budget does that, but again, like that's why we're here debating, working through it and everything tonight to like find what that line is and like what all of you as student representatives feel like is important.
Thank you.
And then next up, Caucus Leader Garrett, you have the next question.
Hi, yes. I was just wondering if how the privilege fee came to the conclusion of the College of APD receiving a 90% callback when there's no other college that received any callback. And also in addition, this being a quite expensive program, I just was wondering what their explanation was.
Yeah, so I can elaborate on that one pretty, like that one's actually like pretty unique. Yeah, and the 90% like you brought up, we actually looked pretty much into 100% budget cut on them from the start. Because a lot of like what the College of APTE does and like some stuff that they brought up in their impact statement, we felt like could be covered through like donors or like potential other options. Specifically, the College of APD puts like the funding towards their lecture series. However, when we met with the CSI accountant, it turns out that APD had actually already spent part of their allocation for the year. So we couldn't take 100% from them. So we ultimately settled on a 90, basically like leaving room for the funds that they've already spent, but still taking as much as we possibly could. So does that answer your question on like how we reached that number?
Yes.
Perfect. Are there any other questions at all? I believe I'm caught up with everything in the chat. Are there any other questions, again, about this process, about the bill, about everything at this time? Looks like there's some information being shared in the chat, but I'm not seeing any questions. Seeing none, we will now continue on for the evening. I do want to do one last call for directors' reports, just in case I missed anyone earlier before I jumped in. So are there any other directors who'd like to give a report? Seeing none, we'll now move on. So we don't have anything to vote on at this time. We don't have college caucus time, no minor allocations, and no final action. So with that, we'll move into introduction of legislation for the evening. The only bill we have to introduce tonight is Bill 2021-14. Can I get a motion to consider Bill 14? Caucus Leader Kidd moved the bill and seconded by Senator Harmon. With that, will the author of this piece of legislation please come forward? And then it looks like Caucus Leader Phillips moved to allow the author to summarize, which was seconded by Caucus Leader Carlson. Are there any objections to allowing the author to summarize? Seeing none, thank you. It's a 14-page bill. We'd be here for a while.
Hi, everyone. I'm back. So obviously this is not a new piece of legislation, but I will just be giving a general overview as well as some additional information on why some decisions were being made. So like Nate mentioned, this is going to be a 14-page piece of legislation. So looking at the general overview, we're going to be starting out with our whereas clauses. This is going to give some context as well as we do give a specific whereas clause for each entity that kind of details some of the impact, and most of that information was received from the impact statements that we received from entity directors. Then we will go on into the actual allocation and numbers for the piece of legislation. So this will be for fiscal year 21. This is a decrease to their fiscal year 21 allocation, but a lot of people like to consider it a callback amount because we have already allocated out that money. And then in the last section, it is going to be the be it enacted section. This is some of the specifics. So we do have a change on our insufficient funds whereas clause. This is a pretty minor change, but I think a really beneficial one. The change that occurred was we included the words prior or current fiscal year because there was no explanation for which fiscal year this would be. And we actually did implement it in the current fiscal year, which I'm not sure is the quite intention of the clause whenever it was created. So we wanted to make sure that we had the power to do it in a future or a prior or current fiscal year, or like change the budget for the next fiscal year due to prior insufficient funds, or change the budget in the current fiscal year due to current/prior insufficient funds. As well as we did include a phrase that says we can request different percentages. In the clause, it says that we need to ask for the impact of a 1%, 3%, and 5% decrease. This fall, we did not do that, and we asked for different percentage amounts, and the entity directors were gracious enough to kind of let us do that, even though it was not specified in their contracts. But going forward, we wanted to make sure that the committee and the speaker, president, and Priv Fee chair did have the opportunity to ask for differing amounts of impact statements. So those are the changes for the insufficient funds clause, as well as there are some changes to specific contracts that allow for additional flexibility. So for example, one of the changes is the campus entertainment fund contract. Typically, they have to purchase a speaker that is more than $20,000 because a lot of their performers are online. Their costs aren't $20,000. So we decrease that amount to allow them some additional flexibility because of their decreased allocation amount. So that's a little general summary of the bill. Some areas that I would like to touch on are going to be ones that you might have questions about for what their allocations amount are for. So first one that I want to look at is, or really the main one that I want to look at is union operations. they currently have a 0% decrease. And this was something that was done really intentionally through discussions with Corey Williamson, the director, as well as administration. The K-State Student Union is currently facing a pretty deep deficit because they rely a lot on revenue from people coming and purchasing from the bookstore, purchasing things from their food restaurants, having events and renting out spaces. Because of their loss of foot traffic, they are not receiving any revenue. And so they're one of the entities that has been affected the most by COVID. So we made sure that they were at a 0% decrease. And the way that we did this was actually by being a little bit harsher in some of their other union entities. So if you'll look at the K-State Student Union Repair and Replacement, R&R Reserve, as well as we did consider Union Program Council and Campus Entertainment Fund as a part of the union because they are like under unions control, I guess. So by looking at all of those entities together and taking additional money from the entities besides the union operations, that's one of the ways that we were able to try and keep union operations at 0%. Looking at counseling services, as a previous speaker touched on, they are being decreased 25%, and that is because they currently have $544,000 as a carryover amount. So their decreased amount is going to be $210,000. So it is the goal of the committee that their callback will come from that carryover amount, meaning that it should have minimal impact on counseling services operations. As well as student health, which we touched on a bit. This actually will be an amendment that is hopefully going to be made soon. But the net decrease after this amendment would be a little bit around 11.6%. That does include the $500,000 worth of like subsidies that we would be getting from government funds. So looking at having that $500,000, currently, Lafine is being decreased $212,000 to their operations. After the amendment that we hope will pass, they will be decreased $156,000. So that's a little bit to touch on some of the areas that possibly could be a little bit more contentious. With that, I now stand for questions.
Are there any questions for the speaker about this piece of legislation? We kind of already did a lot of questions, so I'm assuming they might have all been asked. Any questions at all on Bill 14? Seeing none, it looks like in the chat, Caucus Leader Phillips has made a motion to special order Bill 2021-14. That motion has been seconded by Senator Kraslow. So with that, Caucus Leader Phillips, you have first right to debate. Just so everyone is clear, the motion to special order means that instead of sending this bill to committee at the end of the night, instead we would debate, vote, and discuss it like all this evening, the same night it's being introduced. That motion requires a 2/3 majority to pass. So with that, Caucus Leader Phillips, you have first right to debate on the motion to special order.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So as a previous speaker touched on, the timing of this bill is really important, which is why I believe that special ordering this bill is definitely in our best interest for multiple reasons. The first of which, these budget changes are for this fiscal year. So it's extremely important that our entity directors know what their current year budget is going to be, so that way they can best utilize it. Additionally, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting today, some of these entities are already starting to get close to their callback amount and amount spent. So we need to make sure that those budgets are set so that, overspending doesn't occur in that way. And then additionally, when we look specifically at the privilege fee committee, next week, actually on Monday, we're going to be beginning our traditional 3-week review process of every entity. So being able to really focus in on specific entities for the future amounts that we're going to allocate will really be beneficial rather than, continuing to work on this piece of legislation. And then finally, just a note that I wanted to add, special ordering is technically a 1-week process, but really this legislation was mainly introduced last week. So I really don't feel like special ordering this is a rush by any means, just because this has gone through a multi-week process, both in committee and it was introduced by presentation in Senate last week. So I really hope that you'll join me in voting to special order this bill for tonight. Thank you.
Are there any questions for our speaker about his debate? Seeing none, I will now be seeking any debate in the negative on the motion to special order this piece of legislation this week. So seeking any debate in the negative. Seeing none, I'll be seeking additional debate in the positive. Is there any other debate in the positive on the motion to special order? Is there any more debate at all on the motion to special order? Seeing none, we will now proceed into a vote on the motion to special order. If you're voting on this, please open your participants tab and click the green yes or the red no buttons right now. So if you would like to special order this, so vote and debate on it tonight, vote yes. If you would not like to do it tonight and would like this process to take another week, vote no. This requires a 2/3 majority of those voting to pass. So like if you're abstaining, we don't need to call for an abstention because it's of those voting. If you're a proxy, please DM me your proxy vote and who you're a proxy for. And we've had a couple people join our meeting as well. If you need another explanation on how to vote, where to vote, please do that now. Again, if you're a proxy, please make sure to cast your proxy vote too.
Nate, just letting you know, we need 33 affirmative.
Give us just a moment. We're just going to verify that everyone who clicked the buttons is a senator and eligible to vote. So yeah, if you're a senator, you can vote on this. Okay, so after verifying all the votes and counting all the proxies, we have by a vote of 42 to 4, so that's clearly more than 2/3, the motion to special order passes. So Bill 14 will now move into final action for tonight. That means that it will now be debated and everything in the way it would. So this will not be sent to a committee at the end of the meeting. So give me just a second to clear everyone's votes. With that, since this has now been moved into final action, I will now seek debate in the positive. The author has first right to debate on this. It looks like Cox Leader Phillips has an amendment. So scratch the debate. Amendments take priority. So Cox Leader Phillips, you sent me your amendment already. So give me just a second to screen share it. Okay, so Cox Leader Phillips, you have first right to debate on your amendment.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, just like was mentioned earlier in the night, earlier this evening, there was an email received dealing with Lafine's funding, basically a little miscommunication. With the initial goal of cutting from $1 to $1.5 million, there was then an additional meeting with Lafine after it was discovered what the true financial impact of COVID would be. And there was a little bit of a miscommunication regarding that agreed to amount, with the one that everyone thought was $156,000, but the actual agreed to amount was $100,000. So this amendment is fixing that error, essentially, basically decreasing Lafine's callback by $56,000. And this amendment will really help to ensure that Lafine can continue to provide critical services in the midst of COVID-19. So I really hope that you'll vote yes on this amendment, and I will take any questions.
Are there any questions for the maker of the amendment? Chair Booz, you have your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you can go for it.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I wanted to make sure that I kind of have this right in my head, but did Lafine believe that it was offering 100,000 in additional cuts, and you believe that it was offering 156,000?
Yeah, that's essentially what happened. So yeah, this is just correcting that error.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I can just answer that. It was a math error over email communication. So their initial cut was about $56,000, and we thought they were offering an additional $156,000, but they thought they were in the email that it was $100,000 plus the $56,000 we were already cutting them. So it was just an email communication error, and we received that correction from them at like 5 p.m. tonight. So this would have been corrected on the final draft of the bill, and we would have presented it to Privilege Fee had we not received it so late. So.
Right, thanks.
Are there any further questions for the maker of the amendment? Seeing none, is there any debate in the negative on this amendment? Is there any additional debate in the positive on this amendment? Is there any additional debate at all on this amendment? Seeing none, we'll now proceed into a vote on this amendment. Just like we did with the special order, you'll vote using the yes, no buttons here. Amendments require a simple majority to pass though. And like before, since it's just out of those voting, if you're abstaining, you just don't need to hit a button right now. So at this time, please feel free to go in and hit your button. If you're a proxy, please DM me your proxy vote, and then we will verify everything. Senator Grills, you had your hand raised for a second. Did you have a question?
No, just click the wrong button. Sorry, guys.
Okay, you're good. Okay, so we're now closing the voting. It looks like we had that amendment will pass 48-0. The amendment, so Lafine, just to clarify now, since we don't have a final piece of legislation in front of us, but the amendment that's being screen shared, Lafine in total will have to return $656,327 instead of the $712,000 amount. So it's reducing the amount that they have to give back to student government. So that amendment has now passed. When I flip back to the agenda will still have old numbers on it, but those will be corrected when we certify this and get it all sent out. Just so everyone knows as we're looking at this. With that amendment passing, we now move back to first right to debate in the positive for the author. So the author still has first right to debate in the positive. So Madison, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, hopefully we'll be done hearing my voice soon. So this is a piece of legislation that a lot of people have put really hard work into. The Privilege Fee Committee, as well as multiple guests, have come to 2 or 3 additional meetings to discuss this. There has been a lot of reviewing of impact statements, talking about what is the impact on students going to be? How are we able to balance giving what students need, as well as balancing this financial crisis? So I really think that this is a piece of legislation that I am very proud of. If you have any qualms or concerns about it, I would really ask that you do that in the form of amendment as opposed to voting no on it. This bill not passing tonight would definitely be a pretty big deal, and we would have to have a lot of additional meetings to fix that. And entity directors really need their fiscal year 21 funding and callbacks as soon as possible, since we are already like 4, 5, 6 months into the fiscal year. Getting this to them as soon as possible is going to make sure that they can best prepare for their entity reviews this year, but also just plan their budgets for the rest of the year. There's been a lot of discussion about this bill. I hope that you support it. I know that it's something that I really think is sadly a tough decision that has to be made, but it's something that I'm really proud of. And with that, I stand for questions.
Are there any questions for our speaker about their debate? Seeing none, I will now be seeking any debate in the negative on this bill. Also, just to echo a point that a previous speaker made, amendments are in order at any time. You can indicate in the chat if you have them. There was an amendment template sent out this afternoon that every senator should have received. So it's pretty easy to fill out. And we'll definitely, again, make sure that everyone has time to do that. If you're working on something, like DM me and let me know too. Yeah, I'm seeking debate in the negative right now on this bill. Seeing none, I will now be seeking additional debate in the positive on Bill 14. So if there's anyone else who would like to debate in the positive on this bill, looks like Caucus Leader Phillips, you have the floor.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm back again. Hopefully you won't have to hear me too often either. So yeah, looking at this legislation, as previous speaker mentioned, there's been a lot of hard work put into this bill. Basically, ever since we've gotten back to campus, this has been what the Privilege Fee Committee has been doing every meeting, in between meetings. It's basically, other than school, been our life ever since then. So this has been thoroughly looked over by a lot of different students with different backgrounds, from Nathan Tell and Madison all the way down to the committee with guests, advisors, a whole bunch of different people like that. But this bill is a very difficult bill. Just because of the magnitude of it. The cuts are already substantial, and our goal as the committee was to have the minimum impact on student health and student employment as possible. And so I would strongly encourage this version of the bill, just because going farther in cutting more money could lead to some really negative impacts that we really don't want to see. But additionally, not going far or taking money off of this and not going as far could really set us up in a poor financial situation in the event that COVID has an even worse impact next semester, the next year, so on. So in my opinion, where we're at right now is the sweet spot to hit, for lack of a better term. These decreases right now are essential to the long-term stability of the privilege fee and the short-term stability of the privilege fee. And all efforts are going to be made to not increase the fee, but this is a really important first step that we cut these budgets back. But finally, I know that a lot of students, a lot of you out there, there might be specific entities on here that you don't necessarily agree with the cut amount and different things like that. I would really encourage you, if you have something that you don't agree with, go ahead and make an amendment. I feel like, more discussion on this is way better than not having enough discussion. And so if you have an opinion, go ahead and make an amendment, and we'll definitely, discuss that and keep the best interests of students at heart. For whatever reason, if you aren't able to make an amendment, if you don't feel comfortable making one, go ahead and send me a DM, text me, whatever you want to do, and I'll definitely make a motion on your behalf. I just want to make sure that we have the appropriate amount of discussion tonight, and that, with this being such a large piece of legislation, that it really does have the best impact on students. So that's all I have for now. If you have any questions or want to make an amendment, let me know. And yeah, I'll stand for questions.
Are there any questions for the speaker? It looks like Senator Rossi, you have a question.
I have two questions, so I'll have a follow-up after this. Curious if student employment, minimizing student impact on student employment was a key factor in your decision-making. How is it that we don't have clear information or estimates on the impact to student employment? And what might it take to get those estimates prior to passing this bill tonight?
Yeah, so a lot of that information was contained in the impact statements of the entities that were sent to us. All of those documents are available on our privilege fee Microsoft Teams page. If you want to see that, we can definitely let you have access to that. But basically, any entity that submitted an impact statement, which they all did, they told us what the impact on student employment would be, whether it was a specific amount or kind of like Lafine, where they basically said like there would be a loss of potential opportunity. And so some of it is hard to quantify just because some entities didn't give specific numbers while these were requested. But the closest I would say that we could get to specific numbers would just be going through all of the impact statements and adding up the specific numbers that were given to us. We haven't exactly done that, but each entity in itself was considered with those numbers in mind, if that makes sense. I hope that answers your question. And if anyone else wants to touch on that, feel free.
Yeah, I see it. Am I free to respond?
I was going to say, if you have a follow-up question, feel free. I was just going to tell you that.
No, that's perfectly good. And I recall that from earlier discussion. I'm just curious. It still seemed like there wasn't an overall understanding. And so short of going through all the resources here in the chat, I'll just accept that that work's been done to the best of our ability.
Chair Colburn, you have the floor.
Were student design services and Lafine, just like off the top of y'all's head, like the only ones that mentioned impacts in student employments based on the cuts that we were giving? Or were there any others?
I can elaborate on that, Blake. Blake, if you want to defer to me, I can elaborate on that. So I'm just looking at the full list right now, Lily. And so other ones that pop up to me include Collegian Media Group mentioned impacts of like student employment / student payroll, but theirs wasn't necessarily like losing employment. It was like restructuring a lot of what they did and like who got paid for things. Looks like Kelly Ferris, who's the director for Center for Student Involvement, elaborated that CSI will be cutting 2 positions and then reducing hours. Wildcat Watch Operations elaborated on that. The student union elaborated on it in their impact statement, and that was why we gave them a 0 specifically for them. I'm trying to think of any others on here. Student Design Center, KSDB Operations specifically mentioned 1 position being terminated. And then Rec Services was again a more general one. They just said that student employment like could potentially be impacted, but they didn't have specifics. And I believe that's all of them when I scroll through the whole list. So does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, I will now be seeking any debate in the negative on Bill 14. So if you have any debate in the negative, right now would be the time to do that. Seeing none, I'll be seeking additional debate in the positive. It looks like Senator Harmon has positive debate. Senator Harmon, you have the floor.
There we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. Madison and Blake have done, my apologies, former parliamentarian should know better. Previous speakers have done an excellent job of going over a lot of the process and reasoning behind some of these specific numbers. I'm chiming in here just to provide some perspective from a committee member as we were going through this process and what some of those thought processes looked like when determining some of these specific entity numbers. And just so like for some examples, for me personally, looking through this bill, things that really stood out to me were that high like 12.7% decrease to Lafine, and things like that, and definitely the counseling services when we discussed that, and also why was the union, only getting a 0. Things like that were things of specific like concern to me about how those shook out. But it's been addressed of like, yeah, that $500,000 reserve in Lafine or in counseling services is a huge blessing. And same with that grant for student health coming in. And so also just like for some perspective to me, looking at things like cutting health services to me initially didn't make too much sense when I saw numbers like only a 40% decrease to like band and orchestra and choral and opera, things that I thought were really going to be funding events and things that probably weren't happening here in the age of COVID on campus. But like we mentioned, those impact statements were all really thoroughly vetted. And going through there, those departments I just listed were excellent examples of how I changed my mind in my initial reaction to those, and really analyzing those impact statements, seeing the impact that even just a 20% more on any of those departments to 60% would have had them have to like with vendors and suppliers. And so that's just some for some perspective, just to flesh out a little bit more of how deeply really every single one of these entities have been inspected and how those impact statements have been analyzed and then followed up on if we had any questions on them. And so, yeah, that is definitely just my perspective as a committee member serving on this committee. And I would wholeheartedly recommend that you all vote yes on this piece of legislation. Like a previous speaker said, we're about in that Goldilocks zone of not being able to take any more, but also not wanting to take any less to set us up well for the future. So with that, I would love to help answer any questions.
Are there any questions for our speaker? Seeing none, I will now be seeking any additional debate in the negative. Any debate in the negative? Seeing none, I'll seek any additional debate in the positive on Bill 14. Is there any more debate in the positive? Chair Colburn, it looks like you're raising your hand. You have the floor.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't have time to type. I figured that was faster. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is debate fully in the positive. I will be voting yes on this bill, but I kind of compiled some of the information just to share it succinctly as it relates to student employment. So based off of what Speaker Bothwell and others shared in the chat, and I've been attending Priv fee meetings, so I have like I've read through some of the impact statements. So we know that this bill by next semester will directly result in the termination of 4 students who are currently employed. Those are coming from CSI, Student Design Services, and KSDB. There are 2 student design services positions that are being cut, but there's no student who's currently employed in those since they had turnover in those positions. But that's not where it ends, unfortunately. We just don't have specifics from there on out. So the Collegian is going to significantly change their pay structure and might only be paying like their top editors, not contributors like they currently do. So that will see a significant reduction in compensation. Wildcat Watch is also probably going to cut student positions, though we don't know how many, and we also don't know to what extent they'll cut hours versus cutting entire positions. And the same with Lafine and Rec Services. Rec Services mentioned possibly a reduction in overall like hours that the rec is open, in addition to reducing the number of hours that each student employee works, but didn't leave like cutting entire student employees off the table, though that wasn't necessarily explicitly said in their impact statements. The same with Lafine. They mentioned changing hours and reducing hours for students, but because they are facing a substantial cut, might also have to cut student employee positions. So I just kind of wanted to succinctly share that information. That information was really important to me as we were going through each individual entity. But I think, as a previous speaker mentioned, it is really helpful to view that in one kind of overall picture. While I wasn't viewing it in the overall and just organization by organization, I do think it is good to know that this is a difficult bill to vote for those reasons. I'm a student employee. I don't get paid off the Priv fee, but every department across the university is facing a lot of budget shortfalls. I've had some hours reduced, and so I hate that any vote that we're having tonight is going to cause that. But unfortunately, I also don't want the university to never be able to get bonds for a building project again, because we're going to reduce our bond surplus amount by so much that we will no longer be trusted lenders who can get loans and bonds for building projects that students might want to do in 20 or 30 years. So while it is difficult, I do ultimately support this bill. I stand for questions.
Are there any questions for our current speaker? Seeing none, I will now seek any debate in the negative on Bill 14. Is there any debate in the negative? Seeing none, is there any additional debate in the, oh, it looks like there's an amendment. Chair Booz has an amendment. Sorry, was this email? It was just emailed to me. Perfect. Give me a second to screen share it, and then Chair Booz, you'll have the floor. Sorry, hold on. Okay, Chair Booz, you have first right to debate on your amendment.
Okay, it's not currently screen shared. But I can start debating since there. All right, yeah, so this is an amendment to decrease the callback on counseling services from 25% to 20%. I mean, so when I actually was at the privilege fee meetings where we chose to do this, chose to take a 25% decrease. And while I think we need more decrease than a 1%, I think it was very valuable to have a bigger decrease, and that most of that decrease can be covered by the carryover amount that's been built up over the years. I'm still concerned that our decrease is too high. In particular, the Director of Counseling Services and Lafine, Jim Parker, I believe, sorry if I'm messing it up, but he stated that he plans to hire several new people by the end of the fiscal year, and that by holiday season 2021, this carryover balance will be down. Like if we do the 25% cut, the carryover balance will be between $0 and $100,000. I mean, it does seem to me like we made this decision on relatively short notice, and given that there is a possibility that it'll run down to $0 within within 1.5 years if we make this cut, I think it would be valuable to make a slightly smaller cut in order to give us more of an assurance that counseling services will be able to continue to employ those people that they are currently hiring right now. So the other thing is I really thought that it was valuable to discuss this cut to counseling services because it's a rather large cut and it was done in committee. And so I thought it was helpful to get some more eyes on it. So I'd love to answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions for our speaker about his debate? Looks like Chair Colburn, you have a question.
Do you believe that by reducing the amount to 20% instead of 25%, that's going to have a significant impact on counseling services?
Well, I mean, that decrease is about, let's see, I'm doing mental math, but it's about $40,000, which it's substantial for any entity that isn't one of the big four. I kind of just threw this up here because I wanted discussion on this. So I'm not entirely sure. However, the fact that they're going to be drawing down that carryover makes me want more of a margin for that carryover.
Are there any additional questions for the maker of the amendment? Seeing none, I will now be seeking any debate in the negative on the amendment to reduce the counseling services callback from 25% to 20%. So is there any additional debate? It looks like Senator Wallace has debate in the negative. Senator Wallace, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you. So when I was on the committee, I know we discussed doing 25% because we were looking at an amount of money that had been held over from years past. And I don't foresee really how it's more sustainable for moving it to 20% to maintain a salary for a new member on their team. So that's my only reason I would be against this, is because I don't think it's a sustainable reason to say that to employ someone, that extra $40,000 is good for a long-term model. And I feel like it's kind of difficult to make that decision based on that. But that's all I have negative for it.
Are there any questions for our speaker? Seeing none, is there any additional debate in the positive on the amendment to counseling services amount? Chair Brown has a question thing. I'm just going to assume that is a point of parliamentary inquiry.
Hey, this isn't quite a point of, I have information about this topic. I have an email that Jim Parker sent me, and I just want to make sure that like everyone has access to this information that we are about to make this decision on. But I'm just like trying to upload it to OrgSync, but OrgSync hates me. So like,
Sarah Brown, you probably need to like print the email as a PDF and then upload it if you haven't done that already.
I was just gonna copy and paste it into a document.
Okay, that works.
Madison, you could also copy and paste the text specifically into the chat. I don't know how big it is. If we're thinking of the same email, you might be able to.
Okay, that's actually probably a smarter idea. This is
Okay.
why
It looks like Chair Brown is going to copy and paste an email from NC Director Jim Parker into the chat right now.
It's too big. It's not gonna let me do it.
Okay.
I hate to throw another option out for it to Speaker Bothwell, and he could screen share it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madison, which email are you referring to? Because I'm copied on a lot of emails that you are.
I'm sending it to you right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I just like explain this email, or would you rather have people?
I would prefer that if you want to use it in some way, that you use it for some form of debate, either positive or negative. I don't know which you feel like it's more helpful to. You can kind of be like Chair Colburn earlier, who said that it wasn't entirely positive, but just wanted to go.
Okay, I will not debate at this moment, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone had this information because it's pretty pertinent to the topic at hand.
Okay. Let me screen share this email.
Wait, actually, I think it's the right email. There's two emails.
Is this one is the one about the questions that you all use to decide on that 25%?
No, this is the follow-up after that decision was made. This is the email. I will, as Nate is screen sharing this, I will put both of these on OrgSync.
Okay, give me
for more people to see.
just a moment.
Sorry for the unorganization.
You have a question thing. Okay. This is what we're referring to. Madison, would you like to, can we just count this as positive debate or something, negative debate, whatever we're on? We're on positive,
No,
right?
that's fine.
Okay, we'll count it as positive debate and you just explain what this is.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So in the Privilege Fee Committee discussions, we have quite a few entities such as the K-State Student Union who have a reserve account with the privilege fee. So for example, like student activity fee has a reserve account. We can access their account balances because they're like an account with SGA. And we utilized those numbers in their account to make some of our decisions. So we would say like, oh, they have a really large carry forward balance. We're going to decrease them additionally. One of the faults of this we found out was that entities can have internal reserve accounts or carry forward amounts that they maybe didn't necessarily like self-proclaim to us. And so there was a chance that there was a little bit of unfairness through that process. So one of the things that the committee asked I reach out to entity directors for was asking about internal reserves / carry forward amounts. So if you want to scroll down a little bit, Nathan, please, to this question right here about the carry forward amount. Jim Parker, the Director of Counseling Services, responded with this answer right here, saying that they had $544,000 in their account that was considered quote unquote carryover from previous years. The reason that this is because they've had some vacancies in terms of positions that they're wanting to fill. And so he said he's planning on using this to pay for clinical staff going forward. The committee's decision was based off of this. Some of the things that they mentioned were, should he be funding full-time salaries from an unsustainable funding source, because obviously next year he's not going to have this carry forward amount. And so that was one of the main questions, as well as like we've considered other reserve accounts for in terms of this decrease. And so the committee decided to cut 25% from counseling with the intention that it was specifically taken out of this $544,000. So that is the additional information that was received that like kind of prompted the committee to make this choice. I know that wasn't debate like, but I will now take any like clarification questions that people might have about this.
Yeah, are there any questions for Chair Brown? Cox Leader Carlson, looks like you have one.
Yeah, so just to clarify, if we were to proceed with the 25% cut that was proposed, what is the total dollar amount that would be left in there? Would it be just out of that reserve account basically? And what's the dollar amount that would be left?
Nate, could you please go to that second email I forwarded you? I believe it is going to be here, I have it somewhere here. So I reached out to Jim Parker and said, hey, FYI, the committee made this 25% amendment, which is obviously very large. And so I asked if he had any additional information that he would like to share with the committee to inform us as well as Senate. And so he said that he said this thing right here, basically, that the balance would be decreased to $333,000 after the callback was complete. And then he projects, if you go to the second paragraph, last line, Nate, he projects that at the end of fiscal year 21, there will be between $0 and $100,000 in this account. So he's expecting to probably spend $333,000 on these new positions.
Are there any, your follow-up is granted, Cox Leader Carlson.
Okay, so basically this isn't, I mean, it's not really a question, it's kind of just clarifying, but basically there'd be $333,000 left, but then he's planning to use that money to hire 2 people for 1 year, basically. So the idea of him going down to $0 to $100,000 is due to his decision to hire new employees.
Yes, his decision, as well as that would include the callback amount.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a lot of new info.
I've also been informed by the people in the room with me that this did not need to count as debate. This is a point of information that you were sharing with the body. So sorry about that. I was confused.
No worries.
Are there any other questions for Chair Brown about her point of information? Seeing none. Okay, so seeing none, we'll now return to where we are in the order of debate. So now we are returning to what I accidentally classified Chair Brown's information as debate in the positive. So I'm now seeking anyone who would like to, sorry, let me minimize all my tabs. So I'm now seeking positive debate to reduce counseling from 25 to 20. So it looks like Senator Grills has debate in the positive. Senator Grills, you have the floor.
Hey, everybody. Great explanation, Madison. I'm also on the privilege fee. So this is something that was pretty controversial and we definitely talked a lot about. I definitely understand why we are cutting more than 1%. We found out they have $500,000 in reserves. We obviously need to take more money out of their budget. However, I feel like 25% is pretty high and pretty risky. Based on Jim Parker's response to Madison's email, which keep in mind his responses were not very clear, and so it's open for a lot of interpretation. The way that I interpreted it is that if we take this money out, he will be able to cover everything, but the budget's going to be very tight and there's not going to be a lot of leeway. Personally, I don't think this is a time for us to be gambling in any sense with our mental health services. I don't think this is a time that we should be taking any risks when students are in the most need of these services right now. We've seen about a 4% decline in enrollment, which is basically what we expected pre-COVID. So we are still seeing the same usage, even with that 4% decline in counseling services, maybe like 10 less appointments so far this entire year. But these services are definitely still in need, and we never want these services to be at full capacity where there's no appointments available. That's the last thing that we want. So that's really like my side of it, and I really just don't think this is something we should throw up in the air and see how it works out. Let me know if any of you guys have any questions.
Are there any questions for Senator Grills? Seeing none, I will now be seeking any debate in the negative. It looks like Caucus Leader Clements has debate in the negative.
Yeah, so I'm also on the Privilege Fee Committee, and this is something we discussed quite a bit. I know I was on the committee last year as well, and we targeted pretty heavily anyone who had a large amount in reserves. So I was personally in favor of making this larger cut now rather than when we review them in the future, because this cut now will only affect them for this year. Whereas if we cut them down the road because we have more financial problems, that would affect their operating budget continuing on from year to year. And this is a time of tight budgets. It's not fun, but it is the situation we're facing. However, even with a 25% cut, counseling services can continue to have their full allocated budget, as well as a couple $100,000 in carryover funds. So I saw this as a nice opportunity to get the big cut over with while we don't really want to do it. This is the best time to do it, and we can do it now with minimal impacts, because even if they were somehow planning to fund salaries on carryover funds, that's not a sustainable model. The funds run out eventually. So I would hope that that wasn't their plan, and it to me didn't seem like that in his responses. So either way, these are funds that will be used and will run out. They're not recurring reallocated funds. So I saw this as the time to cut them now, so it won't have a lasting impact on counseling services. And I can take any questions now also.
Are there any questions for Caucus Leader Clements? Seeing none, I have multiple debates in the negative, but it is now time for debate in the positive on the amendment. So I will now seek any debate in the positive right now. Additional debate in the positive on the amendment to reduce counseling services from 25 to 20%. Seeing none, we'll return to the negative debate. And it looks like Senator Wallace is up for debate again. So you can have the floor again.
Hi, thank you. Really, the previous speaker hit most of the points I wanted to, but just to reemphasize, this should not impact their normal allocation and their normal operating budget. And also, we did get some information that indicated that they are not at capacity currently and that they have been able to fulfill their duties for counseling services and mental health, which is very important to all of us, and I think was heavily discussed in our meetings. And so again, I don't think this really shouldn't affect their operating budget at all. This is really coming from more of a carryover amount perspective, which we're trying to reduce to kind of a more reasonable amount, and to pull back again, one large cut when we think it's most appropriate and kind of a most time of need that we think will be the best compromise, I think, for the situation that we're in. And that's all. So I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for Senator Wallace? Seeing none, I will now seek debate in the positive again. So if there's any additional debate in the positive on the amendment to reduce counseling services callback. Seeing none, I'll return to negative debate again. I have Senator Harmon.
One other really important piece to note, especially on this, is that we do have our full actual review of counseling services this term. And so later this year, the privilege fee committee will be fully reviewing in our normal allocation cycle, our allocation to counseling services. And as the previous speakers mentioned, that is truly the best time to be making decisions about allocations to potentially fund new positions. This amount of money is really a carryover from previous years, and so it is finite and will run out. And in discussion of the committee and remembrance of past meetings and other information we've had from our review this spring, it was kind of come to the conclusion that that carryover had come from the high amount of turnover that counseling services had in their employees. And so during that turnover, that's what allowed that salary money to build up into this 500,000 kind of reserve carryover. And so these recent hirings, it wasn't clear in Mr. Parker's email that these were, it was basically assumed that these new hires were filling those vacancies and not really for completely new hires in addition to their original staff. And so that's great because it means they're not trying to fund whole positions based on a reserve amount. That definitely would not be sustainable, like has been mentioned before. And it's also great because it means that this money shouldn't be, it's either one or the other, and the email isn't clear about that. But either way, either these positions are funded in their normal allocation, which we are reviewing anyway later this year, or they're funded off of this reserve amount. And even if that was the case, there would be multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars left over in this one-time amount. They would have time to make those decisions. And it was generally agreed that they probably aren't funding these positions off of a finite reserve anyway. Either way, they certainly shouldn't. And so in conclusion, now is really the time to address this carryover and how this money is best used in this bill at the 25% decrease. Leaving it in that account really doesn't serve students in a great way. And it certainly doesn't, this is a significant amount on our overall bill, $200,000 about. And so reducing that by 5% won't eliminate all of those gains that we found. But this is certainly, in my opinion, the best time to be making this cut. And then we have our full review. We're lucky we get to review counseling services in our normal cycle this year, where we can make legitimate decisions on the more long-term effects of normal year-to-year allocation and how those positions should be funded. With that, I conclude my debate.
Are there any,
and urge you all to vote no on the amendment. Sorry.
Are there any questions for the senator? Seeing none, I will now seek debate in the positive again. So any additional debate in the positive on the amendment? Chair Colburn, you have the floor with positive debate.
I don't think I've ever debated this much on a priv fee bill, but something new. Yeah, so I really appreciate what previous speakers have shared in regards to some of the financial considerations. I'll be honest in that I'm not on priv fee for a reason. I don't really think in those number analytical ways, but I do think it's important to think about the student aspect as well. And I also just kind of wanted to bring in some information about counseling services usage. I think, like as previous speaker mentioned, counseling services has seen 10 fewer appointments be made this year in the first 2 months of school compared to last year, and we've had a 4% decline in enrollment. So that is really, if anything, when we consider the percentage of students who are taking advantage of these appointments that they pay for through the privilege fee, it's probably even increased a little bit, considering that we have, number one, fewer students enrolled, and number two, fewer students on campus, though they do services. But most importantly, I just wanted to kind of make everyone aware that October is historically the worst month for student mental health. The first 2 months on campus, everyone is adjusting and things are going relatively well for students. But October, we across the nation and especially at K-State see a real spike in crisis for students reported to Student Life and Counseling Services. And so I say this not to say that, oh, we need to keep their money for this month, but to say that to judge Counseling Services usage rates on the first 2 months of school just isn't really fair. They haven't hit kind of their busy season yet. And additionally, like when you consider that first year students are still adjusting to campus and might not even know about Counseling Services or might not feel comfortable quite yet going to them, really those first 2 months are probably some of the lowest that they see in the year, and it's really only going to increase from here. So I think that it is fair and understandable to consider like cutting their reserves now. I think that that is a really interesting financial argument that I'm still like kind of considering and toggling with, but I do think it's important to consider that their usage is going to increase this month and throughout this year. So it's not really fair, I think, to say that they are handling their capacity or that they're like below capacity for the past 2 months, because they will certainly reach, if not exceed, that capacity coming soon.
Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, I will now seek additional debate in the negative on the amendment. So anyone who'd like to debate in the negative against the amendment to reduce Counseling Services callback? Seeing none, I will now seek any additional debate in the positive for the amendment. Is there any additional debate at all? Looks like Chair Brown has debate in the positive. Also, I would like to let everyone know that after this debate, the motion to call the previous question and close debate is now in order. We've had 5 opportunities in the positive or negative, but Chair Brown, you have the floor.
Can I ask a clarifying question first? This is $40,000. Going from 25 to 20 is $40,000, correct?
It's 42,000 and something.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had that right. Hi, everyone. A few thoughts that I have on this amendment are looking at, okay, so in my opinion, 25 is a lot. I know that they have a lot of money in reserves, but if we're going to be like conservative fiscally for any entity, Counseling Services is one of the ones that I would push to be fiscally conservative in terms of their decrease. We have cut a lot of money from this budget, from like all of our budgets totally, and I personally feel like we're at a good spot for like the fiscal year 21 insufficient funds decrease. I definitely think that some additional cut to Counseling Services is needed, which is why I think I'm more in favor of a 20% as opposed to 25. And some of the reasons that I'm more in favor for a 20% is just giving them a little bit of wiggle room. Right now in Mr. Parker's email, he mentioned that they could have anywhere from $0 to $100,000 in their account once they hire these clinical staff, and after they if they did receive this 25% callback. I would really hate for them to get down on that lower side and have like not much money for kind of like discretionary spending. One of the other reasons that I think I'm more favorable to 20% is because they are getting reviewed this year. And I definitely could see if we deplete their reserves completely, that gives them an even bigger reason for them to say, we need a lot more additional funding for the next like 3 years or however long we decide to do their contract. So I would say just looking at like for how we have the discussion for the review in the spring, if they have a little bit of wiggle room in their current reserves, that hopefully gives us a little bit of additional wiggle room in terms of what we give their funding. And obviously those are 2 different amounts of numbers, like $40,000 is not comparable to what we'll be giving them over the next 3 years. for the regular entity review, but I do think that if we deplete their reserves, they could, or like not reserves, but if we deplete their account, they could use that as like a really big push for receiving an even larger amount of funding. So I guess I'm just trying to think of like maybe having a little bit more balance. 20% is still a lot. I will still be in support of this piece of legislation, whether this amendment passes or not. But those are my thoughts. I now stand for questions.
Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, I will now seek debate in the negative, but like I said, the previous question is now in order. So I'll seek any debate in the negative or exhaust debate, whichever comes first. So any debate in the negative. Senator Harmon. Senator Harmon got in first. Senator Harmon has debate in the negative.
Yeah, so very good points brought up on all sides. Where I fall, I definitely appreciate the different values judgments it takes to make that call, and I'm by no means objecting to those. Those are different values judgments, and I hope, I mean, that's the point of the deliberative body, is to make those calls. Points I wanted to at least bring up on the objection side is that this is really just about the only cut out of all of these that truly has no discounts on services offered to students. It's important to note that there's no shortage. There is very much a possibility that as we get into the school year, that those numbers would increase. And I would very much appreciate, I don't know the historical jump on those. And so if anybody has positive debate to educate the body on what the average percent of jump in counseling services visits may be as we get into the later months of winter, I would certainly appreciate that. However, given the information provided by the entity director, they have no appreciable backups or waiting lists right now. They just filled those positions that were likely vacant before. And this whole amount of money is truly a gift to us as a body and to the privilege fee committee, that it's there. This is exactly the time. These reserves are meant to be used in times of crisis, just like this. This is This is really one of the only decisions in this bill that we can truly say that about, and I think is one of the best places where we can feel most responsible, recovering and calling back some of that money. And then another point is that the 5% deduction totaling of about $40,000, in my opinion, that's certainly not enough to leave in there and decide that and think that that's enough to maintain a position even for another year. And so I certainly don't see a sizable difference in potential position funding based on that amount. Like we said before, like it shouldn't even be funding positions in the first place because it's a finite, it's not a renewable $40,000. And so I think the best value that this money can serve is to put the student body and the privilege fee in a better place going into the future, and recognizing that this is one of the only cuts that we can make that doesn't directly impact students. And so with that, I appreciate all of the debate. Those are some points I wanted to bring up in favor of keeping the 25% decrease.
Are there any questions for our speaker? Seeing none, the motion to call the previous question has been called. Is there a second on that? For anyone who doesn't know, the previous question means that we will end debate at this time. So there's a second from Senator Kroslow on the motion to call the previous question. We'll be voting again on this motion through the participants tab. Michael, how many votes? Is that 2/3 or 50? That is a 2/3 vote. Sorry, that requires a 2/3 majority to pass. So out of those voting to pass. So please go into the participants window, click the green check mark if you would like to end debate on this subject at this time. Click the red no button if you'd like to keep debating. And then if you want to abstain, you don't have to hit anything right now. Yes, this isn't your vote on or for the amendment. Thank you, Chair Booz. This is whether or not you want to keep debating the amendment. And again, proxies, please send me your votes. Okay, so at this time, the motion to close debate will pass by 36-7. So with that, debate on this has now ceased. Because debate has ceased, we will now move into a vote on the amendment itself. So we will now be voting on the proposed amendment that's being screen shared at this time. Just to clarify for everyone, this amendment reduces from counseling services their callback from a 25% callback to 20%, meaning they would send back to SGA 168,000 instead of 210,000. That reduces our overall privilege fee, like budget cuts, by about $40,000. Again, if you need a clarifying question on what this amendment does, please feel free to speak up or indicate so right now. But I will now open it up to voting again on the amendment. An amendment requires a simple majority to pass. So at this time, you can go into the participants window. Proxies, please DM me again, even though you just did it, what your vote will be on this amendment. Noes have it for right now. I have 2 noes by proxy.
You're still on.
Sorry. Thanks, Andrew. I'm just talking to the others. Okay, so after verifying the vote total, we have 16 votes yes for the amendment and 28 votes no for the amendment. So with that, the amendment fails at this time. So the amendment to counseling services will continue to have a 25% decrease at this time based off that vote. Because of that, we now return back to the original bill. So let me get us back there. So now we are back debating the bill as it exists currently. I'm currently seeking the 5th debate in the positive at this time. So I'm now looking for a debate in the positive on the overall bill. It looks like Chair Booz has debate in the positive. You have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to debate in the positive, after proposing my amendment, just because I still think like that this bill is the product of a lot of work and that it's better than not passing it. And so I wanted to start just with a little anecdote of, one of the things that I've really learned through my participation in SGA in kind of a visceral way is that everyone has a largely legitimate claim on the money that you give out, whether it's from taxes, whether it's from the privilege fee, at any level of government. Like everyone will present a legitimate claim. And the hard part is deciding between them. I think in my freshman year, we had a debate for UPC about cutting them by $2,000. And now we're cutting their budget by $120,000 for this year. That's 60 times the decrease, if I'm correct that it was UPC. And so like, this is huge. I'm not taking this lightly, and I hope no one is. And I know the committee didn't. So, yeah, and really, I mean, I think we've done a lot of work considering this, both the speaker, Chair Brown, President Whitmer, as well as the committee as a whole, and then the guests of which I was included. And so in general, other than like, a few things like counseling services that I probably want decreased, like I really think that the current positions on the bill and the current things that the changes that it makes to our governing documents as well are really a net good. And sadly, but hopefully we should pass this. So thank you. And I'll answer any questions you have as well.
Are there any questions for Chair Booz? Seeing none, I'll now be seeking debate in the negative on Bill 14. Seeing none, I'll now seek debate in the positive. We've now hit 5 and 5 debates though, so a motion to call the previous question is in order. We'll go till the question is called or until debate is exhausted. So I will now seek debate in the additional debate in the positive on Bill 14. Is there any additional debate at all? It looks like there is additional debate in the positive from Chair Brown.
Hi, everyone. So I know we just went through kind of a spicy amendment debate, but I did just want to cap it off and say I really do hope that you vote yes on this piece of legislation. A lot of work has been put into it, and I think showing that we have amendments and have been having these discussions shows that things have been thought through pretty thoroughly on this. Sadly, it's not the most exciting bill. I'm not going to lie, it sucks that a lot of these changes have to be made. But the matter of the fact is they just kind of have to be done. So I know I am going to still feel for a lot of the loss for whether it's student hours, decreased programming. This is not something that anyone wants to do, but I still hope that you vote yes on this piece of legislation. And I now stand for any additional questions.
Are there any additional questions for our speaker? Seeing none, I will now seek debate in the negative on this bill. I will now seek any additional debate in the positive on Bill 14. Is there any additional debate at all on Bill 14? Seeing none, we will now proceed into a roll call vote on Bill 14. Just a reminder, you always have 4 options when voting. I like to make sure everyone knows. Yes, no, abstain, and pass. You can only pass once if you'd like to see how everyone else is voting, but then it will come around to you the second time and you must pick one of the first 3 options. Please remember, if you're a proxy as well, to say by proxy at the end, just so we know that. And again, you can type your vote in the chat or you can unmute yourself and say it out loud, whichever you are more comfortable with. But with that, I will now be turning it over to Speaker Pro Tempore Billman for a roll call vote.
Hello, everyone. Just to tag off of what Speaker Bothwell said, a possible reason to abstain would be, you just have like a personal conflict with something that's going on. I do not encourage abstentions because you don't feel confident in your vote. With that, Atchison,
Yes.
Bain,
Yes.
Booz,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Bruce. Thank you. Brummett,
Yes, by proxy.
Bruna, Burke,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Carr, Clements,
Yes.
Colburn,
Yes.
Croslow,
Yes.
De Santiago, Diaz de Leon,
Yes.
Dillaboo,
Yes.
Doc,
Yes.
Fox. Thank you. Frederick,
Yes.
Gallardo,
Yes, by proxy.
Garrett,
Yes.
Glasscock,
Yes.
Grills,
Yes.
Grolmes,
Yes.
Hamlin,
Yes.
thank you. Harmon,
Yes.
Hurd,
No.
Heimerman,
Yes.
Hernandez, Hutchings,
Yes.
Jambunathan,
Yes.
Kidd,
Yes.
Levi,
No.
Manners,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
McVeigh,
Yes, by proxy.
Muthu Kumar,
Yes.
Knoll, Norwood,
Yes.
Nunink,
Yes.
Penikatu,
Yes, by proxy.
Phillips,
Yes.
Porter,
Yes.
Purdy,
Yes.
Richenberg,
Yes.
Rodriguez, Schmidt. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to remove that. Shunjay, Snyder Ben,
Here. Sorry.
Um,
Yes.
that's all right. Snyder Blaine,
Yes.
Vaught's,
Yes, by proxy.
Vogelmore,
Yes.
Wallace. Thank you. Ward.
Yes.
And I skipped Senator Rossi. I apologize for that.
Yes.
Thank you. Wells,
Yes.
Wilcox,
Yes.
Willis,
Yes.
and Windholtz.
Yes.
Okay, is there anyone else whose name I did not call?
Maggie, Rodriguez was a yes. Rodriguez Wi-Fi did not work and she had to leave the meeting. But she texted me her vote and says that she's trying to get back in. But I know she was on the call.
Well, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, with that, Bill 14 passes 49 to 3 to 0.
Thank you all. That was the process, but I very much appreciate all your questions, debate, and discussion. I think you all are very, very deliberate, and I appreciate you all so much for that. With that, we have now exhausted, our roster of legislation for the night. So with that, we will now move into our second open period. Are there any speakers for our second open period tonight? Elections Commissioner Coleman, you have the floor.
Hey guys, first of all, thank you guys so much for a long night and a great discussion and voting. First of all, I have a few things to talk about really quick. The first one being that, like Nathan had said at the beginning, the application is now open to be part of the Elections Committee. It's a very important committee, and we're going to be talking about a lot of important things once we get started on things with that. Especially this year with facing an election with COVID-19. And you guys will be very important, and a lot of work will be put on your shoulders to help me work through it. But it is now open, but you have to remember that if you are taking part in this committee, you will not be able to run for a position at the same time or actively contribute in any way to a different campaign. So keep that in mind. The second thing I wanted to talk about is I hold some positions outside of SGA, and those positions are as news director for Wildcat 91.9 KSTB, and also a student director for the Collegian Media Group, which oversees the Collegian Manhattan magazine, the Royal Purple magazine. Yearbook, I'm sorry. And I just wanted to give that, firsthand experience that I want to thank all the hard work that Privilege Fee and Tell and Nathan put into making this legislation. It's really going to hurt us. But the hard work you guys put into it and the serious work you guys have talked about it here, I can't thank you enough for the work of that. And my supervisor at the radio talked so highly of Privilege Fee after meeting with them and facing these cuts, and thanked them even for having the cuts as much as they are. But no, it's going to hurt. I'm going to even myself will be impacted. I'll have a 20% decrease in the amount of work I can do at the station that's paid. I already put a lot of hours in that are unpaid, but it's something we're facing with and dealing with. And we all pretty much acknowledge that this was an inevitable with COVID-19. But on a happier note, on the last thing that I wanted to bring up is that next week, more than likely, you guys can look forward to something I've been trying to bring about for a while. And that's the start of our student perception survey, where we're going to be going out and talking to students and asking them about how much they know about SGA and what all it does and how important it is on campus, to get a better outlook to how much outreach SGA has to the wider student body. This was something I've been working on since last year. We were going to do it last spring, but then COVID happened. But we're back and we're going to be getting it done. So I hope you guys look forward to that and seeing the results soon enough. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Elections Commissioner Coleman? Seeing none, I do want to add just a quick little thing onto what Elections Commissioner Coleman said about the Elections Committee. One thing I don't think people might be aware of is that one member of the Elections Committee is selected to be on the Elections Board, And that elections board is the one that votes on the outcomes of all hearings like regarding candidates. So if there's like violations filed, it's a single member of the elections committee, the deputy attorney general from the judicial branch, and the elections commissioner who vote on everything. So like if you feel strongly and passionately about overseeing, like making sure our elections are equitable, I know some of us with more experience have some history with that like we think of. I would highly encourage you to like apply for the elections committee. You do have a lot of input and say if you're one of those people selected. So I do just want to stress that application and the importance of that committee again. Caucus Leader Carlson, I have you next for second open period.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. As was mentioned earlier in the day, all the way back when we had announcements, my group that I'm president of, Student Athlete Advisory Committee, is doing Cats for Cans. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but I just wanted to come on and remind everyone that there is a donation bin in CSI that you can drop off donations at, and then also attached in the email that Nathan sent with the final agenda is a flyer that has a QR code. So if you want to donate monetarily, you can donate there. The only thing that is specific about that is if you want to donate with a credit card or with PayPal, then you just have to note in the description that it's a donation that goes towards Cats for Cans, because that's their general donation link. So Cats for Cans, and then also indicate SGA, because I'd like to be able to tell you guys what our total donation total was from SGA, as well as the total amount of pounds of cans that are collected. So thanks in advance for all your support.
Are there any questions for Caucus Leader Carlson? Seeing none, Senator Levi, you have the floor next.
Hi, everybody. I know this has been brought up before, but part of the reason I am speaking to you, addressing you now, is because I am about 2 weeks away from the premiere of The Toss-Up. It's a new kind of debate that I am trying to foster. And actually, it's altered a little bit since the last time I brought this up. My advisor has brought to my attention that having a more open format that's more akin to like a town hall or a panel discussion might be a little more conducive and organic for our audience. That said, I still need debaters to participate in this. Andrew Booz has been gracious enough to lend his talents to this cause, and if anybody else in SGA would be interested in participating, I would be so happy to hear from you. You will be compensated for your time and fed during the event. All I'd ask is participation in our promotional materials and just some short briefings before the event to make sure nothing is stated that reflects negatively on K-State. So if anyone would be interested in participating in this event, which kind of stands as my application for what's a better way to host a presidential debate, then go ahead and shoot me an email.
Are there any questions for Senator Levi? Seeing none, Caucus Leader Phillips, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, thanks everyone for the great debate tonight on the privilege fee bill. It was really important, and I'm really glad that we had lots of discussion over that. I know you're all tired of hearing about privilege fee, but I'm going to plug it really quick. As you'll notice on the announcements, there are currently 2 open senator spots, and we're actually done with insufficient funds right now. So it will probably calm down a little bit if you've been intimidated by that, but definitely if you're interested in applying for privilege fee and you're a student senator, make sure to fill out that application if you want to add a committee, switch committees, whatever you want to do. But we would love to have love to have your input. So yeah, go ahead and fill out that application. It ends tonight at 11:59. So even if you have any thoughts about it, reach out to me, reach out to Madison, but go ahead and fill out that form. So thanks, and go Cats.
Are there any follow-up questions for Caucus Leader Phillips? Seeing none, are there any other second open period speakers? Okay, Speaker Pro Tem Billman, I believe you have Senate shout-outs.
All right, hello everyone. Sorry about that, there was an echo. Okay, it's everyone's favorite time of the evening. I have one quick announcement really quickly. I don't have a specific date yet because I still need to nail down a venue for it, but within the next couple of weeks, be looking for an announcement. I will be leading a short informational session. I'm gonna guess it'll be about an hour. The modality will be hybridized, so be looking for a sign up form to come in person. This will be just about an hour-long informational session, and I will be giving like a too long didn't read version of the governing documents. So just like, you know, what each one does, like what you can find in each one, and then we'll be doing lots of interactive activities. I might be giving out some candy, things like that. I promise it'll be fun and not too boring, so please be looking out for that in the next couple of weeks. I'm gonna shoot for like a Wednesday at about 4 o'clock because I think that that usually is a pretty dead time. Anyway, without further ado, Senate shout outs, everyone. I'm so excited. There are 21 responses tonight, which is almost double what we normally have. So here we go. If you want to unmute your video for this part, please feel free. Let's build some community right now. The first one is go interns with a little exclamation point and in all caps. So yeah, welcome all our interns. Shout out to all of our SGA members who have made it to the final round for student ambassadors. So proud of you and we wish you the best of luck. Yes, I love that. Thank you, Speaker Bothwell. To all of the phase 2 interns for showing up and being awesome. Yeah. Shout out to Blake Phillips for being the best vice chair and helping me so much during this crazy process. Another shout out to the interns in all caps. No exclamation points that time though. Not gonna call out whoever did that. To Madison, Tell, Amy, Jen, and the Privilege Fee Committee. You all are literally the best people ever, and yeah, go Cats. That was funny. Shout out to Lily Colburn for her hard work on the calendar committee and for always asking great questions / being a student advocate. Another one to Chair Colburn. Thank you to Chair Colburn for her work on the mental health days. Thank you so much. This is an open invitation for any intern to marry Senator Richenberg. Oh, that's funny. Shout out to Blake Phillips for always going the extra mile, especially when it's needed the most. He works tediously along with many other hardworking individuals, such as Madison, Nate, Tell, Booze, and the Priv Fee, to make this bill the best it could be. I applaud you for all of your dedication to our university. Shout out to Andrew Booze for attending like all of the additional Priv Fee meetings. Shout out to the Senate Operations Committee for doing all the tedious work and keeping the ship afloat. To everyone who debated and asked questions during Bill 14, thank you so much for sticking it out, the great discussion and the great questions, definitely. Another shout out to those who debated tonight. Thank you for sharing your opinion. This one's to Trey Coleman. Thanks for your heartfelt speech. Shout out to Madison. She's a light in my life. Shout out to Bryn Carlson. She's a baller and volleyball has a home game tomorrow. This one's just in parentheses. It says, insert proposal to Marta here. That's also Chair Richenberg. So 2 of them tonight. Shout out to Maddie Brown for landing a sweet job with Deloitte amidst a really tough year as Priv Fee chair and always putting students first. Love you lots. Shout out to Kelly for all she does for SGA. You are very appreciated. Oh man. Shout out to Nathan Bothwell. I'd pay $1 million to watch you hit the gavel in Wildcat Chambers. All right, and that concludes Senate shout outs for tonight. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted them, and thank you to everyone for sticking it out tonight.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Maggie, and thank you to everyone. Whoever said that nice compliment at the end, oh, you're gonna make me cry. So with that, we don't have any legislation being referred anywhere. We took care of all of it this week. So I just have to turn it back over to Maggie for second roll call right before we leave. So thanks, everyone.
All right, Atchison.
Here.
Oh, I just typed in H for here instead of a yes. Oh, Bain.
Here.
Booze.
I'm still here.
Brown.
Here.
Bruce.
Here.
Bruna, Burke, Carlson,
Here.
Carr, Clements,
Here.
Colburn,
Here.
Crosslow,
Here.
De Santiago, Diaz de Leon,
Here.
Gillaboo,
Here.
Doc,
Here.
Fox. Oh, thank you. Frederick,
Here.
Garrett,
Here.
Glasscock,
Here.
Grills,
Here.
Grolmes,
Here.
Hamlin, Harmon,
Here.
Hurd,
Here.
Heimerman,
Here.
Hernandez,
Here.
Hutchings,
Here.
and Bunathan,
Here.
Kidd,
Here.
Levi,
Here.
Manners,
Here.
McKee,
Here.
Mufukumar,
Here.
Knoll, Norwood,
Here.
Nunning,
Here.
Phillips,
Here.
Porter,
Here.
Purdy,
Here.
Richenberg,
Here.
Rodriguez, Rossi,
Here.
Shunjay, Snyder Ben,
Here.
Snyder Blaine,
Here.
Vogelmore,
Here.
Wallace, Ward,
Here.
and then Senator Wells was excused. Are you still here, Senator Wells?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, cool. Wilcox, Willis,
Here.
and Windholtz.
Here.
Okay, and then Caucus Leader Burke, I see you. Anyone else whose name I did not call or who is here? All right, with that, we have 45 senators present, which is more than we started out with. So thank you so much, everyone.
With that, sorry, Maggie hadn't muted her computer. With that, we'll now move into adjournment. Can I seek a motion to adjourn our meeting? Caucus Leader Kidd moves that we adjourn until next week, same time, same virtual place. That was seconded by Senator Croslow. Are there any objections? Seeing none, thank you all, Student Senate. I will look forward to seeing all of you next week.
We made it.
Go Cats.